The Boys is back. Season 4 is here. This is a show that I know we both love. We both really, really enjoy. Not only did we review all of season 3 when it premiered 2 years ago, we also talked about the spinoff show last fall, Gen V, which of course is setting up a different corner of this universe, but also directly tying into everything that's happening with The Boys as well. But I know that for me personally, it was one of my favorite seasons of television in 2022. I thought season 3 was extraordinary. It achieved another level, some of the best superhero comic book live action TV that I've seen. So I was super excited for season 4 to come back. And also on top of that, we now know that this is the penultimate season. Season 5 of The Boys, which has already been renewed, will be the final season of the series, which Eric Kripke, the showrunner, he's teased for a few years now. And some people thought, well, it sounds like he might do more than 5 seasons. Maybe he's going to do 6, 7. Some people were also fearful because he was the showrunner for Supernatural. That went like 15 seasons, went a very, very long time. So I think a lot of people started to get a little nervous, like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Maybe we should keep this, sort of tight and compact and really focus in. But he has now sort of confirmed that season 5 will be the end. So we are entering into the last stretch of this show. I will say we are going to get into spoilers for this show. We're going to do that every week. We're going to talk about all the details of everything that happens in each episode. But before we get into that, let's just start off with our general high-level big picture thoughts of what we've seen so far. So I will pass it over to you, man. What did you think about this 3-episode premiere of The Boys season 4?
The Boys remains The Boys. It's still, first of all, there's a ton of ridiculousness happening on the internet. People are review bombing The Boys season 4 for being what I guess all the incels are talking about nowadays, of being too woke and too political.
Oh, that's
so the audience
they've been doing that
like
for years
so
now.
Ridiculous. It's still nothing new, but it's just funny coming off the Acolyte, seeing exactly. It's like they share the same brain. It's like a hive mind of incels. It's so ridiculous of what's happening, but it's being review bombed. It's still political as it's ever been. In fact, this season might be more political than it's ever been, I think. And it's still crazy. There's still crazy, wild things you're seeing. There's still so much fun to be had. There's still a tremendous acting coming out of the wazoo. But I think ever so slightly, this is still, at least the first 3 episodes, as of right now, was still probably like the weakest batch of episodes I've still watched so far within The Boys, even though it's still doing tremendous and it's still doing great. It's easily still some of my favorite watches this show is. I'm still having a great time. And I think, what's funny about these first 3, I'm very happy they gave us the first 3 because it does feel like a packaged first part of the season. It feels like I feel like they even wrapped a kind of a bow on what the first not half, but the first, I guess, trio of the season is supposed to look like. The first 33% of the season is supposed to look like. It starts off exactly where you think it's going to start off, and when it ends, you're like, huh, that's okay. That makes sense exactly where it ends. I wonder what's going to happen next. So I'm very excited to see what the next episodes look like. And man, there's still some crazy stuff going down. It's so hard to talk about without going into spoilers, man. But overall, I'm still having a good time with it. But these first couple episodes, it's something about the plot points being hit that still feel like a little bit of the weakness that we've gotten so far. But overall, I'm still having a good time with it, and can't wait to see what happens next.
So this 3-episode premiere, it's so far, I think, out of everything we've seen out of The Boys, we're entering into kind of the darkest territory that the show has explored yet. And that's by design because it is the penultimate season. Things have to get the most dire that they possibly can before we enter into the final stretch of season 5, and you experienced that in these first 3 episodes. Like it's dark. It's a very dark tone. There's a lot of themes of trauma and legacy and loss that are explored. There's been some really, really heavy stuff that's occurred throughout this show all up until this point, on top of the comedy and the fun moments and the what the fuck moments, which there's never a shortage of that stuff. But when you really drill into the characterization of everybody involved, everybody is so fucked up. And when you really unpack that, it's really sad to see. And I think that these first 3 episodes are so down in their tone. They're so dark in their tone. It's pretty much shaping up what this season and giving us, I think, insight into what this entire season is going to be. So I would just caution people that the rest of the season is probably going to be just like what these first 3 episodes
For
present.
sure.
And that might not be the most appealing because it can be hard to ingest that, especially if you watch these 3 back to back to back. This might actually be a season where it's beneficial to have off the time in between to just like breathe and soak in everything you experience and then return to it a few days later, because it's a lot. It's really, really a lot. And so for me, it's good because I know it's not going to be the best season. I already know that. I know that season 3 is really kind of the peak of everything we experienced thus far. It was just so much of that show. But I think that this is the necessary turn that we have to make in order to get to season 5. Like sometimes you have to go really, really deep, really, really insular to get to all the stuff that's going to have to be paid off in season 5. And that's not to say that season 5 won't be dark. It absolutely will be dark. It's going to be very, very vicious and a lot of carnage, a lot of death, a lot of destruction. But I think that we kind of have to really kind of unpack everybody to the fullest extent that we can before all hell breaks loose inevitably in season 5. And so we're seeing a lot more character studies. We're seeing a lot more deeper dives on the backstories of all the main ensemble involved here. And I think it's useful. And so I enjoyed these 3 episodes. Again, some what the fuck moments that definitely occurred. Maybe not to the degree of what we've experienced in the past because it was more focused on character and emotion. But when we got to the character and emotion, you kind of see the dynamics that are at play with everybody and how there's just so much conflict between all of the main characters. It's really, really interesting stuff, in addition to all the political commentary and the parallels that are drawn here, which are always just on point because they know exactly what they're doing. And so I really enjoyed it. Can't wait for the rest of the season. But folks, with all of that said, if you've not checked out these first 3 episodes of The Boys, this is your official spoiler warning. We're going to get into all the details. So definitely go check those out and come back and listen to the rest of our conversation. And I will also say, it was 3 episodes. It's a lot. So we're going to be bouncing around here. We're going to go back and forth between events that have happened. We're going to just try to break down the major plot points of all the main characters. And of course, we should start off with Butcher, who is perhaps at his lowest point thus far. At the end of season 3, we found out that Butcher is on a ticking time clock. He does not have long left to live. He will be dying soon because of the compound V that he injected into his system. It's slowly just eating away at his brain. He has like a parasite living within him. And we also see that he's like hallucinating as well. He's talking to somebody, you know, he's kind of just speaking. It's like, who are you talking to, bro? Ultimately, it manifests that it's his wife, his passed on wife that he's been speaking with. But this is all a result of the compound V. It's hallucinations that are just, sort of eating away at him from the inside out. But on top of that, Butcher has also pretty much been ousted from the boys at this point. Doesn't want him involved at all just because of his physical ailments, but also just sort of the dishonesty that he's been moving around with. On top of the fact that he's feeling very guilty about the whole Ryan situation because Ryan has sort of actively chosen to side with Homelander, his real father, to allow him to raise him and to, sort of be shaping his influence. And Butcher's trying to figure out a way to navigate and get back to Ryan. But he's also still doing things and having ulterior motives that are very, very questionable. I'd be remiss not to mention the moment from Gen V that we saw last season. Spoilers for Gen V if you've not seen that show. But Butcher does show up at the end of that series, and he finds out what's happening at Godolkin University, that they are experimenting on these kids, that basically that university is operating as a front to develop this poison against Soups. All of these things are happening, and it's crazy shit going down. So he knows this information as well that he hasn't really revealed. So we'll talk more about him, of course, with more specific things. But what do you make of just like where Butcher is at this point in the show and where we're finding him at?
Yeah, you were talking about that darkness, and Butcher really is kind of such a big vehicle for that darkness. He is one of our main characters. He literally made the boys, and he is on a ticking time clock, about to be out of here. And in every scene he's in, it's almost like you kind of hold your breath a little bit because something could happen to him at any point in time. I feel like for 6 months they've been saying he's going to die in 6 months. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh man, Butcher, what's going on here? And talk about that parasite. I vividly remember just that one scene. They literally zoom in on the side of his head, and you think it's a vein, but it's not a vein. It's a worm, a parasite moving through his head, and it's just like, dude, you are not okay. Like, this is not okay at all. And a lot of people when they're, you know, on their deathbed, feel like it's time to start doing the right thing. And Butcher is of no exception. You know, of course, he always thought he was doing the right thing. He thought he was doing the right thing when he took the V and everything that he's done up until this point, in some form or fashion. But he is, I think, taking everything he's done and starting to realize, like, dude, I have been fucking up for a very long time. And so he spent these next 3 episodes in a way kind of trying to fix a lot of things. He's trying to get Ryan away from Homelander. He's trying to trying to get back into the boys. You know what I mean? He does still do some shady shit when it comes to Huey and A-Train and all of that stuff. But overall, he is still, everything he does is for trying to leave the boys and his, I don't even know what to call Ryan. We want to call him stepson, I guess, and his stepson in the best place possible. And so, man, yeah, it has been dark places. The fact, like you said, he is seeing his late ex-wife is just, it's like, dude, you are not okay. Yeah, and so it's been an interesting, I think, trajectory for Butcher, because he's still so important though too. You know, he's dying, you know, he's like in and out with the boys right now, but it's like, dude, I don't know where you fit in right now. And I kind of, you know, from ML's point of view, it's like, yeah, I see exactly why. One, you wouldn't trust him. Two, you're on your deathbed. Go home. Go do something else. You know what I mean? So it's been so sad to watch, I think, Butcher in this state, and I'm curious to see, man, how he's either going to come out of it or where this is going to leave him. It's a very sad thing to see.
You know, for all intents and purposes, Butcher might be the most complicated character on the show, even more so than Homelander, just because of the fact that he does do so many questionable things to achieve his means, and his hatred for Soups in general, it's so palpable, it's so strong that it often makes him make very questionable, morally questionable choices all the time, which we've seen him do countless times already. And he even looked at his own sort of adoptive stepson in Ryan like, I don't really like you, kid. Like you're one of them and you completely go against what I stand for. But that's also Becca, his wife's son, and how he reckons with that. And he has to sort of come around and grow beyond his hatred for Soups and try to embrace, you know, this adoptive son, but he still can't quite get through to him. On top of the fact that his movements within the boys all the way up until this point have just always been super questionable. He always withholds information. And now even like Grace Mallory is pissed off at him. She doesn't even trust him anymore. And so has to really step up and lead the team. And it's just been so many mistakes and so many mishaps and so many lives lost, I think, on the part of some of the actions and the wrongdoings of Butcher, that it's just left the team kind of in shambles all over the place to allow for these really, really catastrophic events to happen, to allow the Seven to still persevere, to allow Homelander to gain more political footing, to allow Victoria Newman to rise to the levels that she's done. And perhaps maybe if that hatred wasn't so strong, you know, maybe if it was more strategic and more thoughtful, then we could have avoided many of these situations, and conversations with Huey could have been more transparent, because Huey was really, really useful, but he just looked at Huey as like a kid, as a boy. He didn't really respect him. But I think now we're starting to see a little bit more respect and admiration between those two. Whereas like the relationship between him and MM started off in a very positive place, but that's like regressed significantly since it first started. And it's really interesting to see how things just shift due to the course of time and due to, you know, the choices that are made. This family fucked up triangle, we should talk about this, between Butcher, Ryan, Homelander. One of the first moments of the season that we see is at this sort of political rally, and we get this little mini reunion. You know, Butcher ends up stumbling upon Ryan in this kitchen at this political rally. Homelander walks in shortly thereafter. Homelander also discovers, like, oh, you got something going on in your brain. You got a black mass that's living around there. You got what, 6 months? You know, what's going on here? It's very short lived, but I thought it was really interesting to see this showdown, because what this show does an incredible job of is keeping our two primary characters away from each other. We don't get many opportunities and much time where Butcher and Homelander are in the same space. It only happens like once a season. This might have been the only time that it happens this season, if we're being honest, and it happens in the first episode. What did you make of that? The fact that I think we can all tell that Homelander has been feeding fallacies about Butcher to Ryan and really shaping what he thinks of Butcher, but also Butcher is trying to get this son back, get this kid back, you know, to ultimately, I guess kind of care for him, but I think what we see later on, what is revealed, use him as like a pawn, as a leverage tool to try to get one over on Homelander.
Yeah, you talk about how good the show is at, I think, getting characters, especially our main characters like Homelander and Butcher, into the same room. How good they are not doing that too often. Something they also do is when they get them into the room, they're really good at making them like, this is the moment where you kind of can't kill each other. You know what I mean? Like, this is the moment where, because Butcher don't want nothing else but to whoop Homelander. Like, Butcher, if he could kill Homelander right there, he definitely could have. But you literally can in that moment. There's too much at stake. There's too much going on, and I think they're really good at that too. I always love a moment where I'm like, dang, y'all really can't duke it out right now, and it literally like creates so much tension because it's like, okay, now what's going to be said, and you know it's going to be some important character moments going on there. But wow, what a crazy dynamic, because there is so much at play. Butcher's trying to get Ryan away from Homelander. Ryan in all of this is the most confused child that we've ever seen. I mean, and in some ways, I think Ryan isn't completely confused either. There's some things that I think he is beginning to understand with Butcher in Homelander, and how crazy and ridiculous Homelander is. But the dynamic of the three is so interesting because it is like a beginning, middle, and end of like a piece of rope. You know what I mean? Like, literally, Ryan's in the middle and is being pulled two different ways, and in some ways, Ryan is kind of stuck where he is now. But I really love that. I really love that Butcher's trying to like speak to his humanity, while Homelander is on the opposite end. Homelander is trying to speak to his superhero-ness. And Ryan being the first natural born superhero, I think at least the first that we know of, is like a whole nother ball game to all of this, because he was literally, Homelander sees it as one way, as you're a god, but then Butcher on the other side is like, no, that means if anything, you're even more human than some of these other people are. You didn't let it go to your head. You were just kind of born like this. So it's been crazy to see, and I really like how tense the room gets when this happens, man. Because there's even that moment where Butcher's like, man, I saved the boy when I could. You know what I mean? Like, and so none of this would happen without Butcher doing what he did at the end of last season. But it's like, there's just so much at play. It's very crazy.
Yeah, I think even with Homelander in his relationship with Ryan, and the fact that they make sure that we know that Ryan is the first natural born soup in existence, Homelander still finds a way to make it about him. He was like, well, he is my son, by the way. He is my offspring. He always makes it about him. Everything revolves around him in his mind. And so even though his son is special, more special than he is, because he is still, a boy that was injected with Compound V and experimented on. Like, he still finds a way to make it about him, and so it's just like feeding into that manipulation. But ultimately, these three, man, it's so much happening here, and the two in particular, Homelander and Butcher. I mean, this is just a wonderful, wonderful masterclass at building tension and drawing out this eternal conflict that they have. Protagonist, antagonist, Homelander being the arch rival of Butcher. This feels like a heavyweight fight, just waiting to explode. We've seen them fight before. We saw them fight last season, and Butcher was really, 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 really close to ending Homelander, but they just couldn't get it done. He had a couple of moments, actually, and the fact that they're teasing it once again here, which, again, I think probably maybe the only time we see them interact in person with each other, it's really special, because every time they're in the same room together, I feel the hatred. I feel the heat between them. But once Homelander discovers this tumor that's in Butcher's head, he makes it up in his mind. He's like, oh, well, you're not even going to be around that long. Like, we won't have that last dance together that we talked about. It's almost this twisted game in his head. It's very akin to, I think, Batman and Joker. Like, we need each other. We fuel each other. The hatred that we have, this game that we play, this eternal conflict. Like, neither one of us can exist without the other. And that very well may come to pass as we get to the closing of the show. Quickly, we should talk about Joe Kessler, who is played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, coming into the show, most known for his fame in The Walking Dead, of course, but he's also worked with Eric Kripke in the past. But Joe Kessler is he's probably the only sign of hope, I think, in Butcher's bleak existence at this point. He's an old friend, and they stumble upon each other, not by accident. It's definitely something that's there by design. But they start to work together. Joe Kessler, he kind of teases and pokes at Butcher like, yeah, you really had a shot to take out Homelander and you couldn't get it done. You didn't take it. And Butcher has to sort of reckon with that and remember that. But also they start to have, a couple of quick conversations about how they can ultimately try to win Ryan back and maybe flip him again as a tool of leverage in this ongoing conflict between the boys and the Seven and Vault in general. What did you make of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's appearance here? Because they teased it a lot, in the shooting of the season that he was going to be coming around, and I imagine he's going to play a pretty significant role as the season takes shape. But what did you make of everything that he brought to these first 3 episodes?
Yeah, we actually haven't seen him too much. Like you said, I think we'll see him more in that latter half of the season. But right now, I mean, he's there to say exactly what you said. He's literally trying to flip Ryan. He wants to use Ryan as a tool against Homelander, which, I mean, can you blame him? It makes a ton of sense. You know what I'm saying? Who else to beat somebody like Homelander than somebody that's exactly like him? You know what I mean? And so it's a very interesting thing because Butcher's like, dude, he's like 12 years old, like, and he's a child. I'm not trying to get him wrapped up in any of this. But Joe Kessler's like, because they met during, I think, the War on Terror is where they became acquainted in the CIA. I think Joe Kessler has his idea of who Butcher should be, but he's kind of, I think, seeing the softer parts of Butcher now with Ryan around of like, dude, this little kid has changed you. Like, we should be using this kid low key as a weapon. Like, what's going on here? So I love that he's kind of in his ear saying this because, again, it's from a CIA military standpoint, it makes a ton of sense. You kind of need Ryan to potentially defeat the biggest threat that you guys have. But yeah, I really like it because he gives him like a whole ultimatum. You know what I mean? He's like, either train Ryan or we're going to have to kill this little nigga. And I was like, well, it's not that crazy either because, you really don't want him to grow up like Homelander either, who is the worst. So I think he's bringing like a lot of interesting thoughts to the table that, of course, I think Butcher has also thought about, but he doesn't side with. So it's really cool seeing, I think, the other side of I think a little bit more of that radical side that Joe Kessler has within him.
Yeah, I think Kessler also represents, Butcher needs a sounding board. He needs somebody he can talk to in the midst of all of this. Not the hallucinations of seeing his wife Becca, but a real human.
Right.
Because he can't do that with MM anymore. Huey has his own shit that he's dealing with. Like, Butcher pretty much has nobody now. But I think Kessler is that sign of like, oh wow, here is a former friend, somebody I know, somebody I'm comfortable, being honest with. And also Kessler on the opposite end, being somebody who can just give it to Butcher straight and be honest, like, yo man, you're fucking up, or whatever the case may be. Like, that's very necessary for Butcher to have somewhat of a level head. Otherwise, he'll just go off the deep end, and that's never going to be good. So I can't wait to see more of what Jeffrey Dean Morgan brings to the season. Let's talk about Victoria Newman. Again, in this first episode, we start off at a campaign rally of hers. They're trying to infiltrate it, and we find out a couple of very, very key things. One, we find out her daughter's power and the fact that she is indeed a soup, which we had teased at the last season, that she got injected with Compound V. That was exchange. That was in exchange with some political footing that Homelander could get within this whole campaign. But we didn't know what her powers were going to be. Find out it's a very monstrous tentacle face sort of thing that she has going on.
Resident Evil, bro.
It's ridiculous. Like, what happens here? She just goes on a fucking rampage. And then secondly, we find out that Newman not only has the ability to sort of manipulate blood and pop people's heads, but she's also invulnerable, which they haven't really showcased. But we see in a very key moment, she discovers Huey. She discovers, sort of the cover that the boys are operating out of in this van. Huey tries to throw some acid on her. It doesn't work. It just completely burns through her suit, but doesn't do anything to her skin. And even Butcher steps up next to her, shoots her in the head with a gun, and the bullet ricochets all over the van. So she also just has complete invulnerability to pretty much anything. So, I mean, she's like God-level soup at this point. Like, nothing can really kill her, and she can also act covertly. She doesn't have to come out and reveal herself as a soup, which we've seen her utilize several times. After this, we don't get a ton of her in these first 3 seasons, but these are very, very key developments. On top of the fact that she is in this political game. She's running for vice president. She also has the poison that was developed at Godolkin and Gen V. She has that in her possession. She has all the chess pieces really at her disposal right now. So what do you make of just like Victoria Newman's footing in this whole game that's being played right now?
So first of all, Victoria's one of my favorite characters. I ain't gonna lie to you because I love how badass she is. She has everything. She's a head popper. She pretty much we find out she's invulnerable, like you said, after the van incident. I was like, wait, what the hell's going on? They threw acid on her and nothing happened. I'm like, all right, y'all, what? So I love that about her. I love the political game she's playing. Because nobody knows who she is besides like the boys in Homelander. Also really like I don't know. So the something happened maybe first episode where it might be at the end, but her running mate, the person actually running for president, I think she's running for VP, right? The person actually running for president is like, look, we need an anti-soup campaign. Like we need y'all to know that soups don't need to be here ever. She's like, oh yeah, we'll do that thing. And so I just love how she's agreeing to things she knows is bullshit, and I just like to see how devious she is. I like the weaving in and out of her being a soup and people knowing who she is, and I just think she's a really cool character, man. And everything she has going on, it makes it so interesting because on the compass of morality, there's a lot of things she does that's like not the worst thing ever. She does sometimes she be hurting them, of course, if she kills them, pops their head, but sometimes she kills like the worst people in the show, and you're like, huh, okay, at least that person's gone, but at what cost? And I think that's the question where you're like, oh, should she have done that, or what is her end game? We don't necessarily always know her end game. So I love the game Victoria Newman is playing. I really like watching her. And yeah, man, she's really cool. I can't wait to see what more she has to do, because if somebody needs to be able to hurt this woman. I don't know who it is. It's probably old girl from Gen V. You know what I'm saying? The blood powers. It's probably her, but until then, man, this woman's pretty unstoppable.
This is one of the more significant changes from the comics to the live action show. The character of Victoria in the comics was a guy, so they did a gender flip here. But also just the characterization is completely different. You know, different powers, different motivations, different set of events that occur. It's brilliant what they've done with Victoria Newman, because she's truly a wild card in all of this. Like when we have the stability, I guess, for lack of a better term, of what we expect out of the bullshit between Butcher and Homelander, she just comes in and disrupts all of that shit, because you just don't know what's going to happen with her. She's always gaining access to information. She's always using some sort of tool of leverage to increase and to progress her footing, not only in the corporate world, but now in the political world, which is just going to shape all of this shit, because now things have gotten so political across the country just due to the fact that so much has been exposed, you know, about Vault as a company and what they've done, and also just Homelander's actions and how everything is just truly divided. Again, drawing parallels to our own reality, the fact that our country is literally divided. There is active supporters of extremely conservative, you know, methods of thinking, oftentimes incorrect ways of thinking, and there's also people on the far left who also are pretty crazy as well. It's like it works both ways, where it's like you see these things play out, and it's like, yeah, when there's instability like this, there's always going to be somebody like a Maverick who rises and takes advantage of that and stokes fear and uses that fear to further, you know, sort of progress their own presence, you know, sort of in their own power within all of this. And so she is certainly one of the more fascinating characters in this whole thing, and I just love what they're doing. Her daughter, just wild shit overall to see. That was just really, really crazy way to
she's a zombie,
showcase
bro.
the powers. It was like
Resident Evil 5.
That's pretty much the worst case scenario for
2.
a soup at that point, when your daughter seems like so loving and so cute, and she comes out to be a demon from hell at that point. It's just kind of crazy. Let's talk about Homelander. Probably one of the most fascinating villains in television history.
Easy.
Continues to shock and awe, and also continues to just disappoint, and continues to live up to, I think, the just the incredible sort of standards of what it means to truly just be a awful human being. What a terrible guy he is. I mean, it just there was a lot of thinking, I think, last season, especially with the introduction of Soldier Boy. There was a lot of conversations about, oh, well, you know, maybe Homelander, maybe he's right, and maybe there's some things about him that we can, like, you know, latch on to, and that just completely defeats the purpose of the character. Like, he is truly meant to be deplorable. Even though there are things that we can empathize with in his story, because he was experimented on, he had no say in any of this. He's incredibly immature just due to the fact of what he went through. But at the end of the day, he is making choices. He's racist. He's narcissist. He's sociopathic. He's psychopathic. I mean, whatever you want to throw out there, whatever adjective you can use to describe him, he definitely lives up to all of that stuff. But here, we're now in an interesting place because he has ascended to the highest levels of power that we've seen thus far. You know, the end of last season, he kills a person outright in front of the media, in front of the public. He gets cheered, he gets celebrated, but now he's also on trial for the murder of a person, right? That's all happening in addition to, you know, taking Ryan under his wing, but he still has all of this power that he's accumulated. He's pretty much sitting at the top of Vought International. And in the midst of all of this, though, you know, collaborating with Victoria Newman, ascending the levels of power within Vought, getting Ryan on his side, it feels like everything is working in his favor. But there's one key thing: he's getting old, and he realizes that he has a flaw. He goes to the bathroom and he discovers, you know, down south he has a gray hair down there, and he's like, well, wait a second, there's another one, because we find out that he's like collecting these things now, which is probably the most despicable thing to him. Like, I can't be aging; I have to be the peak of human perfection. But you're not. You bleed, you age, you grow old, and you die. What do you make about just that new mode of thinking for him? The fact that I think he's starting to see the vulnerabilities that exist within him. Whereas, you know, we've been so often told that he is the peak of what a suit can be. He's practically Superman. He can do it all, right? He's supposed to be perfect in every way and be pure. But in fact, he actually does have a lot of flaws that we're starting to see get picked apart here.
Yeah, I think it pisses him off that he's kind of, though the timeline isn't the same, he's in the same boat as Butcher. He's like, Butcher, you only got, 6 months to live? And he's over here having a crisis because he found a gray hair in his pubes. Like, he also has a shelf life. You know what I'm saying? Homelander also has a lifespan that is finite, and it scares the shit out of him. And nothing scares, I think, Homelander more than something he can't control. There's nothing you can do about getting older. That's just way of life. That's just how it works. And I love seeing how much it pisses him off. And again, anytime something's out of his control, that's when he spirals. And you know, Anthony Starr is so good at, like, anytime that moment happens, anytime there is something he can't control, or he learns something about himself that he can't control, the spiral you see on his face is always just so well acted and so well done. That it's just really fun to see in a villain, because half the time the villain of Homelander is himself, which we end the episode 3 of him looking at himself 4 different ways. I'm like, dude, you're your own hero, your own villain, he's his own everything, and that's really part of the problem. But what's also a part of that he says is he's a being that feels like he needs love. It's like, yeah. You don't say. You're a person before V was injected into you. Of course,
Psychology 101 and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We all need love. Absolutely.
We all need love. It's 101. So again, but which is funny, that's something he can't control, but he feels like he can't get, because he's such a dick and he's such a terrible person. So it's just such a crazy bumfuck of a character. There's so much going on within him that it just makes for such an interesting study, man. Such an interesting character study. But yeah, this dude is nuts. He killed a nigga in broad daylight, and they were like, you know what? But you're a good dad, and let him off. Okay. Crazy Supreme Court case, crazy case that we see there. But yeah, man, what an interesting character.
Yeah, again, on the surface, it looks like everything is good for him. You know, that everything is just working in his favor, nothing is going wrong. But deep down beneath all of that shit, it's a lot of inner turmoil that Homelander is dealing with. I mean, one of the big things that stood out was just like all of those flashbacks that I think he's experiencing in his mind. Like when he's alone and he's isolated and he doesn't have anybody that he can boss around or anybody that he can just, you know, subject to do whatever he wants them to do. He's really just with his thoughts. And we see so many flashbacks to these pivotal moments in his existence. You know, his relationship with Madeline Stillwell and how he killed her, the relationship he had with Stormfront, you know, all of that stuff went down. The fact that Soldier Boy is his father and he had to go toe to toe with him. Like, there's just so much bullshit he's also been through. That's just kind of crazy to think that, like, you still have to process this in some way, but you're not even mature enough to do that. Like, you're aging, you're getting older physically, But we know that one of Homelander's big drawbacks is the fact that he isn't a mature being because his growth has been stunted from a very, very early age. Like the guy was fucking breastfeeding as a grown ass man. Like, what is that? What is that about? And that just, sort of, I think, reverberates in everything we see him do. Like he is just unhinged in so many aspects of his life. And now he's trying to raise a son and trying to impart his legacy on a son, which is just also crazy because Ryan comes from a very loving mother, a pretty solid household, and now his entire life has just been upended, and he's being raised by the most deplorable, despicable guy on earth. It's like, damn, Ryan, like you were good, bro. And we get why Butcher is obviously trying to get to him, to get through to Ryan, but at this point, I think Ryan is now conflicted. He wants to appeal to his father, he wants to impress him, but he's seeing what this world is really about. One of the big sequences that takes place between Homelander and Ryan is in episode 3. They're getting him ready to train for a public stunt, a public bank robbery that they're orchestrating. And they're doing this to essentially make Ryan into a suit because Homelander eventually wants him to be a part of the Seven. They're giving him costumes. They're pitching him marketing plays, all this stuff. Like the homeboy shit is hilarious. Their marketing department is off the fucking chain. Like they just got to go. We got to get them out of here. But Ryan is like, what, 14, maybe 15 at this point, and they're already grooming him to be next up at bat, to be sort of the next shining star of the Seven and of Vought International. And then it just goes, again, off the hinges. They get out and do this stunt that was orchestrated. And in the midst of all of it, Homelander's like, throw him. Throw the guy. Like, just throw him. Ryan does so, splatter, blood and guts all over the fucking side of the skyscraper. It's crazy. It's a crazy incident. But again, it's just, showcasing like Homelander now thinks he can just do whatever and it goes unchecked because he did win the trial. He did get off. And also his view on humanity, it's very cut and dry. They're just humans. They're toys to us. Like they don't matter. They're like, what are they? They're just toys to us. And he's teaching this stuff to Ryan. So how did you feel about just seeing like how much of that influence is rubbing off on Ryan? The fact that like, wow, this kid who was once, sort of, I think innocent and sweet and definitely was in a loving position is now just all of a sudden becoming, it seems like a little bit more sinister, although there might be some hints at him being conflicted at this point.
Yeah. The sinister parts are so interesting because some of it is right now by accident. Ryan does have this power that he has no really clear direction on how to control. He doesn't have a real teacher because Homelander is going to tell you to go 100 every time. You know what I mean? And at certain times, I'm like, damn, if Professor X was here, he wouldn't have told him to use his powers that way. You know what I mean? Like, damn, why'd you literally tossed the dude through the building because he told him to, he was like, push him hard. Oh my God, I can't believe oh boy died the way he died. But Ryan is conflicted because like this is now his keeper. This is the person he's who was watching over him and it's so interesting for Ryan because he did grow up, you said, in that household, but that household was growing him up like a normal human being, teaching him how to care for things. And that's why it's so easy sometimes for Ryan to be like, I don't know about this one, Dad. Like, this kind of sounds crazy. Homelander will be saying something, and he's like, yeah, no, that don't sound right. He won't say it out loud because who can really go against Homelander out loud? Sister Sage, who can really go against Homelander out loud? But like, in the grand scheme of things, Ryan can also only say so much sometimes, and he has to stay to himself and keep within his own thoughts. So it's kind of crazy. But Homelander is so selfish that he was like, Ryan, didn't I give you everything? He said, I've given you everything I've always wanted. I have never heard anybody say that in my whole life. I have given you everything I've always wanted is crazy. But that exactly tells you how Homelander is using Ryan for his own good. He wants the legacy to happen, not to put Ryan in a better spot, but for now that you know that you're dying, he wants Ryan to upload the name of Homelander even brighter than it's ever been lifted up. And so it's just crazy how, although Homelander is telling Ryan these humans, they're toys and they're playthings, now Homelander in some ways, he's only upgraded Ryan slightly above that. He's using Ryan as his plaything to again make his legacy and submit his legacy as Homelander. Even make it even brighter. And so yeah, it's just really fucked up at the end of it. Homelander is so fucked up. He doesn't know anything about raising a child because he wasn't raised correctly. So none of this comes as a surprise, man. But wow, I feel for Ryan, man, and I hope that he doesn't get too sinister being around Homelander. But like you said, I think the conflict within Ryan is really good. He's doing a good job, I think, of not necessarily teetering the line, but of questioning everything that Homelander does to him.
Gotta love those good old generational curses. Speaking of Homelander, let's move on to talk about some of the other members of the Seven. Most notably, new character introduced, Sister Sage, played by Susan Hayward in the show. Her power is a soup. She is the smartest person on the planet, and get that correct, smartest person. They try to reduce her down to the smartest woman.
Person.
She's like, no, I'm smarter than everybody. Let's just get that straight. But Homelander goes to recruit her. He finds out about her because he's at the point where he needs somebody who's going to be honest with him. He needs somebody that he can strategize with because everybody in the Seven has become a yes man. Ashley isn't doing anything. A-Train, the Deep, they are all just they're so fearful of him, and they're bending their will so much to everything he desires that he doesn't have somebody to serve as sort of a checks and balances system. You know, he needs somebody who's going to be able to outsmart him and to think of the long game that he can play, you know, and how he can continue to, you know, obtain more power, obtain more influence, but also be able to do so in a strategic way and not in just a completely chaotic way. Because if he's left unchecked, then he's going to be ultimately responsible for his own demise. He finds Sister Sage, and immediately she's like, yeah, I know exactly how we can go about all of this. She compares him to Caesar, you know, in terms of being a dictator and how he can manipulate all of this and ultimately bend humanity to his will, because that's ultimately what he wants to do. He wants to eradicate humanity. He wants to erase humans off the face of the earth. They're not pure. They're not clean. Soup superiority, soup supremacy, you know, is what he's all about. And she is concocting plans for him in order to make this a reality. So what did you think about just what Sister Sage brought in these 3 episodes? Because immediately when we get introduced to her, to all the stuff we see at TruthCon and to the remainder of the events, you know, in episode 3, she's absolutely ascending very quickly. And she replaces Ashley and pretty much becomes like the new acting CEO of Vought and the right-hand person, the right-hand woman of Homelander.
I think she's a really cool character. You know, first and foremost, very, again, political, I guess, social commentary show. The Black woman is literally the most educated woman statistically in the world. So I love that the smartest woman in the world is Sister Sage, a Black woman. But as the smartest person in the world, I'm pretty sure you'd get bored really fast and not be able to do some of the things you want to do, or not be able to talk to somebody and be challenged in any sort of way. And sort of the reason she buys into the Seven is because Homelander gives her the opportunity to use some of her theories and her thoughts and strategies on the world. And of course, as somebody who's an intellect would be like, hell yeah, I'm gonna go and do that. Finally, something challenging. Finally, I get to experiment with something. So I love, I really love her motivation there. I think it makes a ton of sense in that way. And like you said, nobody else is challenging Homelander out here. I mean, but can you blame them? He kills everybody he challenges. Now all of a sudden he comes to a moment where he's like, oh, nobody's challenging me. Well, yeah, you done killed everybody that tried to challenge you, dude. What is this? But I really like that as Sister Sage, because everybody's going to look at this Black girl who technically doesn't have any physical powers and be like, why are you here? Like, what is this? What's going on? And so people, again, immediately, it seems like every time she steps into a room, people are looking at her sideways, which again makes a ton of sense given the way the Black woman is treated. So I think she's a really cool character. She makes sense again in so many different ways, and she's like changing the dynamic of so much. People are trying to understand why she's here. Why would she be at the, what was it, the convention? Why would she be at that weird ass incel ass convention? Why is she in these spaces and in these rooms? And I think it makes for interesting conversation. But I think what's even funnier is when he makes her kind of come to the forefront of, like, she now has a suit, she has glasses on, she's like, I'm just trying to be in the background. And it's funny, so I do feel like a lot of the smarter people in the world do try to sometimes be in the background. You don't see them as much. You know, think about your favorite celebrity, how much you see them versus how much you actually see Elon Musk talking on the news, or Jeff Bezos, some of these more high-powered people talking on the. It's just, it's really interesting in that way. But he's like, no, you're gonna you're going to be seen and people are going to know who you are. So yeah, cool character, man.
I mean, we learned from Oppenheimer, power stays in the shadows. Real power stays in the shadows.
Exactly.
That's what she wants, but he's not having that because he's using her
He's an
at the end of the
asshole.
day. He just wants to use her because he needs something there. But I think ultimately what she brings is something that's very, very valid for everything he's trying to achieve. Obviously, somebody who can just like outsmart and outthink all the people on the opposite end, especially the boys who were, consistently trying to undermine everything Homelander is trying to achieve. But she can always just be one step ahead of it, especially considering like he was on trial. This is like a really, really key significant event of his life, and it's going to determine where he goes. And she's able to orchestrate an event that allows them to create a fall guy for viciousness and cruelty, on the part of, the sort of the sacrifice that they make on the part of Tide, MM's like his ex-wife's new lover, and just, sort of using that leverage to orchestrate this whole event and pin this stuff on other people. It's kind of crazy because she can really play that long game in a way that we haven't often seen from other people, because Homelander just now finds everybody around him incompetent. And this is definitely going to create this big battle ultimately between Sister Sage and Ashley, because Ashley ascended to the top of Vought. All the things that she achieved over the course of this show, she's really one of the more slept on characters, but she's very, very integral. But I think now that we're seeing her on the outskirts, and she's threatened by this new face, this black woman, taking the power away from her, we're going to see this white woman and what she's capable of and what she's going to do. Because she also has her own kinks, her own weird shit that she's into. But ultimately, she's after the power. She's after the influence. She wants to be in control. But she hasn't really been able to do that because Homelander just makes her so afraid. Anytime we see like Ashley on the other side of things, sort of experiencing the threat of what a suit can ultimately be, she shrinks, and that's what, the Deep has represented. That's what Homelander represents. And that's now like what Sister Sage represents as well. So just really, really good stuff there. We should talk about Firecracker also, who's another new suit that's introduced. This is a super alt-right soup. She's very, very conservative. She has a vendetta against Starlight, but she's also like able to make these sparks with her hand. That's her power. It's pretty unimpressive, but it is what it is. But she's really like a public agitator. She knows how to rile some shit up. She knows how to piss people off because she believes in the wildest, craziest shit. But this is definitely a corner, a very, very active and vocal corner of our country. This really, really alt-right, super conservative, heavy on conspiracy theories and all of these things that's real. This whole TruthCon thing that happens in episode 2. I mean, these are events that actively take place. And if you go through and really pick apart like some of the conspiracy theories that are at play, you realize like how ridiculous some of this stuff is. There's a lot of flat earthers. So there's a lot of conspiracies about people being lizard people, which we've heard in real life. I know Alex Jones accused Biden of being a lizard person. Like these are real thoughts and ideas that are out there, and there's an active group of people who believe in this stuff. But she's important to the whole game that's being played because she does speak to that corner of the country. And a lot of this corner of the country actively supports Homelander and what he wants to achieve. And so she quickly makes an impression. She quickly becomes a part of the Seven and is now a part of this new group. And so she is now, obviously bringing a lot of new influence and I think a lot of voice to this particular corner of what we're seeing from a political standpoint. So what did you make of just like everything we saw out of her, from like her big introduction to TruthCon to, of course, her new induction and her new membership as a part of the Seven?
Yeah, seeing her at TruthCon, I think was so interesting because, like you said, this is a corner of real life. They're alt-right, pro guns. You know what I mean? Very conservative, corner of the world, or really of the country.
Jesus, babies, and guns. There was a sign at TruthCon that said Jesus, babies, and guns, and it's like, never thought those three things would go together.
Jesus, babies, and guns, Lord Jesus. But there's like there's something about her that I find so interesting though. She's a social media girly. That's like one of the reasons, like you said, she's able to rile people up. That's why she's at TruthCon. People know who she is because she's constantly on lives and making videos about kind of this content, making up lies. But she knows they're lies. And so I really like the conversation between her and Sister Sage, where Sister Sage is like, "What are you selling?" And she gives her some bullshit answer. until Firecracker is forced to be like, I'm selling people purpose. Because people out there really do manipulate the masses. They know they're telling lies, but they're trying to do something else. Their intentions are really something else. They're trying to get them riled up for maybe something to boost their own ego, or because some people, to be honest, have fun with other people who just listen to everything you say, who are that gullible, who who will, you can literally form an army if you talk like that. Sometimes people will run behind you. Some people get off on that. So I thought it was a really cool conversation between her and Sister Sage to get her to tell her the real truth about what she's doing here and the beliefs that Firecracker actually has. Yeah, I just think she's a cool character in that way, because people are using social media in that way. And I love how, again, The Boys takes another concept in somebody like Firecracker and kind of like makes it 2024. You know what I mean? When The Boys came out, I feel like this wouldn't have been as big as of a thing with Firecracker using social media, but the way she uses it now and the way TruthCon works, I'm like, yeah, this makes a ton of sense. And behind her will be people like Splinter who are like, will do anything for her because they're in love with her too. So yeah, I think she's a cool character, man. And what she means to the Seven, they said it. She's here to be anti-Starlight. And she really is that. She's not the prissy, you know what I mean, girl. She really is like the country down in there, more conservative girl. Kind of opposite of what Starlight is. And so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they continuously butt heads, I think, throughout the season. But uh so far she hasn't technically done a ton with her powers. I'm interested to see like more firecrackerness with her powers. We haven't really seen
She
it,
can't do shit
too
with
much.
that power. There's not. What?
Yeah.
She's like Jubilee, but like on a
No,
way lesser scale, like a very very reduced scale of what Jubilee can achieve.
the Seven is getting weaker and weaker.
Like it's kind of crappy.
Seven is. I thought, I'm like, you need to do something, But yeah, I feel like they're gonna give her something to surprise us. That's the thing. I think they feel like they're gonna make her do something. Like she's gonna touch somebody and make her something explode. You can be like, oh shoot, that's what happens. So yeah, we'll see.
I hope so. The moment with Splinter at TruthCon, I will never be able to
Crazy.
unsee that. That is
Crazy.
Wow. That fucking, it's like a human centipede moment. Like because he can clone himself and I just like, goddamn. Just when you thought you saw it all in the show, they kick it up a whole nother another notch. It's really ridiculous when you think about it. He's just like fucking eating butthole repeatedly over and over and over again. But yeah, she's really, really interesting. We should talk about the next three together. A Train, the Deep, and Black Noir too. Which, by the way, Black Noir was killed last season by Homelander. Once Homelander found out that Black Noir knew that Soldier Boy was his father, he completely just like ripped out his guts. And so they've replaced him. They got a Black Noir too, who had some of the funniest lines in these first three episodes. Just amazing, amazing performance. But of course also A Train in the Deep. Like these guys are just always on the fucking butt end of just the worst situations at the hands of Homelander, at the hands of people that love them. A Train, he's obviously sort of on the fence about just his whole placement. His brother is definitely not fucking with him because of just like the fact that he's paralyzed now and he can't connect with his nephews anymore. The Deep has this secret love with the octopus Ambrosius that just can't go public. Still having those back and forth conversations. And then again, as I said, Black Noir 2, the new Black Noir, he's just trying to figure this shit out. He's like, oh, now, so I have to act like this character. I have to like be this character, but I can't talk, but I need direction. Y'all not giving me direction. Like I just feel like I can't function here. I need somebody to tell me what to do. So what do you make of these three? Because they are like, I hate to call them this because they are much more than that, but they are truly bumbling idiots in so many situations. But I feel bad for them also at the same time because they really are like just the toys that Homelander uses when he needs dirty work done. He's the one. They're the three that he called in when he needed to kill those three people to set up the boys, to orchestrate that planned murder and attack to get him off of the trial. So what do you make of just like everything that they're going through here?
No, I mean you're right. They're really the Three Stooges in this thing, man. Just be Mo, Larry, and curling it up. They be doing all kinds of shit. I think Black Noir too is so funny. Every time he's on screen, bro, he's so out of character. And because we spent 3 seasons with the original Black Noir, we know how he's supposed to be. Like we know he doesn't talk. He just whoops ass when he needs to whoop ass. He stays in the shadows. But this dude here, is hilarious because like he is playing a person that's not him. He is trying to figure out, and nobody's telling him what to do either. That is true. Like he's like, am I supposed to, as an actor, you know, you got to have some direction, and nobody's giving it to him. So he's always trying to find the next beat and what he should do. I think it's funny when Homelander introduces everybody at the, I forgot what it was, like a rally or something. He introduces the new seven, and he's like, Black Noir just sitting there punching. I'm like, wait, Black Noir doesn't do that. A Train is like, calm it down. That's not what's supposed to happen. But it's just this stuff is so funny to me, man. But yeah, I like new Black Noir. I think he's hilarious. He's a comedian. He brings nothing else to the table but comedic relief at this point, to be honest. So, but I appreciate it. I think it's hilarious. The Deep, man. Oh man, what he still, he still is also one of the more fucked up characters, kind of next to Homelander, maybe right underneath Homelander in a way, because he's also been through some of the weirdest shit, especially when you're apparently attracted to fish. It's just
it ain't
like,
apparently that nigga loves fucking fish.
He loves doing it, and Ambrosius, his octopus lover, is like, we haven't done anything in like a week. I'm like, a week?
Oh my god,
is that a long time?
I don't know if their hormone cycles are different. Like they got to do it much more frequently. But she said a week, and I'm like, it's not that long, bro.
I was like, oh, a week. She's like, you need to take a vacation. You've been working too hard. I'm like, has he? What has he been doing exactly? Like, A Train took this footage and he didn't even notice. Have you been working hard, bro? I don't know. But yeah, man, what a funny character. The Deep he will always be interesting to me because he fits in so many different ways. He really is, to be honest, at the core of his character, always just constantly trying to be accepted, but it's whatever that means. If he has to do something bad and wants to be accepted, he'll do it. If it's something good and he wants to be accepted, he'll also do that too. But overall, he just wants to be a quote unquote good guy. But he cannot that meter be flipping on and off, man. He cannot figure out where that is. So I think the Deep is always interesting. In A Train, man, our new member of the boys? Question mark. I don't know. Possibly. He's slowly turning, man. But we've seen this for a very long time. Even season 1, we've seen A Train was never fully on board with anything going down. He just always felt like he has been put in this pocket. And even when MM meets with him at the track, MM is like, bro, you've been kind of putting on this Jive Turkey show, you know what I'm saying, that you feel like you had to be a part of. They got him in this movie with Will Ferrell, this white savior ass movie that's going down, which is, I did not expect to see Will Ferrell. I ain't gonna lie to you. I think I missed all the promotion or whatever, but I was like, Will Ferrell, what the hell?
Come back with me to the suburbs. Funny shit. Really, really funny.
They're literally playing The Blind Side.
Yep.
It's literally the track version of The Blind Side. It's so ridiculous. I can't believe they're doing that. But yeah, it's A Train. We have been watching him for so long, but you could always tell that he was never on board with anything he was doing. So it's interesting that like he's finally starting to hit a tipping point that's causing him to potentially and slowly help the boys. It's a cool thing to watch. I don't know how full he'll go. I don't know if he'll turn back. I don't know what's going to happen with A Train, but I love that there is kind of a new soup that's potentially on the horizon of being on the side of the boys, because low-key the boys kind of need it right now. They're kind of going through it, so we'll see what happens, man. But yeah, A Train's story is really interesting with his brother and his nephews, which his brother again still doesn't trust him. I hope we'll have to figure that out later, but it's kind of as the black man on the team, I'm rooting for A Train. I want him to come over to the boy side and be the mole that can eventually get over the 7. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, he I mean, from the series premiere, like he killed
Huey's ex.
He's killed. He ran through her, his ex, and so like he's always carried some guilt. And it's just built. It's just built over the course of all these seasons, and so he makes the most sense to be the one that flips. And I think everything is said needed to be said about the Deep and Black Noir too. Let's move on quickly through these other characters. We gotta get through this stuff pretty fast. Mother's Milk. He is at odds with Butcher. He's taking over leadership, and they even like come to blows. Like he completely just whoops Butcher's ass. Like you cannot be here. You got to go. But he's also still like dealing with his own personal stuff with his ex-lover, the whole Todd shit. His daughter is now starting to act out. We learn about that she's, showing some aggressive tendencies. There's a moment where he reads the book. He's trying to still like figure out his OCD stuff too. So they're adding that to him, but he's just juggling all of this. What did you make of just like what MM is going through and just the fact that he's really had to assume this leadership because Butcher, I think for so long has kind of failed at that particular position. So now MM is stepping up to the plate.
Yeah, and I think he's, as the new commanding officer of the boys, he's learning how hard it is when you have to juggle all these other things and a quote unquote organization. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh my God, I gotta worry about my daughter and my OCD is still going crazy. And like he's worried about that OCD holding him back. And I'm proud of him for at least trying to address the OCD, you know what I mean, reading books. But man, when he finds out Todd gets killed, it's just like a damn. I like what he also says to A-Train in that moment where it was like I didn't like the dude, but he was innocent. And so I love that MM still serves as somewhat a really good I think a really good leader in terms of the things that he wants to get accomplished. He's doing his best, and right now that's really all he can do with the chaos around him. But I think right now as the current commanding officer, I think he's doing a pretty good job.
Huey, he goes through a lot here because his father suffers a stroke, and so he is in the hospital. It's looking really, really bad for him. And because of that, Huey's mother comes back into the fold. His deadbeat mother at this point, because she's not been around. But the revelation that comes with that is pretty significant for Huey because he finds out that his mother has power of attorney in this situation. The fact that like his father could potentially be on his deathbed. His father also did sign do not resuscitate, and so that's going to have some big implications. And so that's obviously creating a rift between Huey and his mother that already was pretty significant, but it's only being compounded by this incident. Typically what happens with like death in the family is like it just kind of makes shit a lot worse between family members. Like all the truth comes out. And then on top of that, he finds out that his mother is working for Vought this whole time. Like she's been working for Vought. So that just makes it even worse because obviously he is on the opposite side of all of this. He's trying to take Vought down. So how did you feel about just those big revelations? The fact that like Huey is in a really, really vulnerable space after this point. And there's even like a tender moment between him and Butcher where they actually share some affection for each other. I think they even hugged, which we've never seen like Butcher hug anybody, which was kind of crazy just to show, sort of the journey that they've been on as two characters. But what do you make of, Huey's circumstances at this point?
Yeah, Huey's also going through it. There's a moment where Huey's trying to help out the boys in their mission, and Starlight is like, you don't got to be here. Like, yeah, kind of have your dad is kind of a quote unquote vegetable right now, or in a vegetative state. He's in a coma, so you don't have to be here. But yeah, he's going through a lot, man, and they do get deep into Huey's mom and the reasons in which she left. I thought that was I don't think they would go that deep. I think maybe that early. I was like, dang, no, y'all really getting into it about this whole depression thing that his mom suffered. So, like you said, he's very vulnerable right now. I'm surprised his dad. Well, I'm not surprised, but it's kind of fucked up that his dad didn't tell him that his mom and him were talking. But I guess he didn't want him to know they were talking. A lot going on in Huey's life right now. Again, they haven't really. He hasn't really used his powers recently either. Him or Butcher haven't really used their powers a ton yet here in these past couple episodes. So I'm wondering if they're maybe they're holding on to maybe using it for later. But yeah, man, he was going through it, and I'm sure after I think he's getting some healing after hearing the reasons why his mom left and what depression does to somebody. It's kind of crazy.
Annie January, formerly known as Starlight. We find her, obviously she is sort of removed that former identity of being a soup, but she still uses her powers, obviously, but she has like a strong group of supporters, the Starlight supporters. That's like the big group that goes against Homelander, but we're also seeing her like really trying to hone in her powers and to like go to the next level. She obviously needs a power source to activate her powers, but anytime that happens, it cuts the power to wherever she's at. It'll completely just remove all of that electricity from a building, from a skyscraper, whatever the case may be. But she's also, again, sort of standing next to Huey, trying to support him, but she's also working with MM and Huey to try to turn A-Train to get that evidence, about the deaths that were framed on the boys, to get Homelander off of the trial. So how do you make of her, and just like what she's going through here? Because again, she made a big statement last season when she, sort of removed that identity of Starlight from herself, but she's also still in a conflict because her organization like wants her to like lean into that because that's going to like provide more support, more money, but she's really trying to remove and disassociate from that former life that she led.
Yeah, and Huey wants her to lean into it too. I think there's one thing. There's a symbol she was in the seven, but I don't think she understands that the symbols can kind of change over time, right? Think about how many, I don't know, fast food chains have changed their logos over time. Like, it's okay. Like, Annie, it's okay to somewhat change your branding ever so slightly. We know you don't associate with them anymore. Now be the beacon of hope, that you kind of want to be. I think it's helpful for you to be that beacon of hope. But I also like that she's like learning how to fly. I love character development things. It's like, oh, she's slowly learning how to fly. That's cool. And then she kind of uses it when she flies into a firecracker spot. It's like, oh shoot, you're really learning how to fly here. So yeah, I love how she's going through character development, but she has a lot of conflicts as well, and I'm hoping they continue with her story because Starlight, we just need more of her in her story, but I think we're starting to get it.
And last but not least, Frenchie and Kimiko, who, for a long time, it felt like that there was a burgeoning romance there, which it was. It was hinting at that. But now we're seeing that they are really sort of establishing their own identities. What I find interesting about these two characters in these 3 episodes, we're seeing them deal with like addiction in different ways and uncovering their past. Frenchie's taking drugs. Kimiko is drinking. They both have really, really traumatic shit. But Frenchie's also like, discovering his sexuality even more, like really trying to lean into it and embrace it. They've hinted at it in the past. He had sort of a throuple romantic situation going on. So there was always like hints that, oh, well, maybe he's like bisexual, but now it just fully seems that he's probably just a gay man. But he also like hasn't come out completely with that information, but Kimiko already knows, and she's trying to encourage him, but she's also unpacking her own trauma because she went through child trafficking and she got injected with compound V. It's just a lot of dark shit going on. And they are kind of dealing with it in not the greatest ways, because it is like elements of addiction. He's doing drugs and she's drinking. Like, she downed like 9 or 10 beers at TruthCon. And so I find it interesting, like where they are right now in their own relationship, that they're leaning on each other, but they're also kind of enabling each other at the same time, and maybe not the best for each other in this particular situation.
Yeah, can you imagine? I mean, Frenchie's situation, man, where, like you said, he is discovering his sexuality, but the man that you're starting to fall in love with is, you killed his parents. Whoa, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how did we get there? Like, that's a crazy thing to think about. And when he takes drugs, he hallucinates about that stuff. He hallucinates about those dark places, and I think he's trying to navigate and figure out: do I tell Colin about those things, or do I still keep it bubbled inside because it could hurt him, and maybe we won't be able to be together after I come out with that information? What do I do? So Frenchie is really fucked up right now, and he doesn't feel like he can tell anybody about it because it's that fucked up. So yeah, he's going through a lot. Kimiko, man, she's literally she's the Wolverine of the show. Like, she can heal through anything, and it's crazy when you're like constantly getting shot and you're quite literally putting yourself back together over and over and over. Although you're like constantly falling apart at the same time. She doesn't know what to do, and she's like, I need to go be a hero and go save these other people, but like, I might have to kill some people in the process. And she sees that other girl and won't tell Frenchie who it is. It's just a lot going on. And like you said, Frenchie says something that was so interesting though, where he's like, I don't think we can solve each other's problems right now. And to be honest, looking at it, it's like, that may be true. Maybe we can't confide in each other right now because both of our paths are just too dark, or we're not at that place where we can tell each other what's going on. So it's crazy to see them kind of drift apart a little bit, but that's the state we're left in with those two.
Also quickly, just love the continuous display of Kimiko's power, the fact that she can just consistently regenerate. She had the moment where she had the little the baby arm,
the strong hand,
very much reminiscent of Deadpool. That was really funny. So I just love that
Mm-hmm.
stuff and just love everything that they're doing here. But lots to look forward to for the next 5 weeks when we get the remaining episodes of The Boys season 4. We will be back to talk about the remainder of the season. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on the 3-episode season 4 premiere of The Boys. If you've checked out these first few episodes, hit us up and let us know what you think.